Fantastic. My name is Jennifer Barkin. I'm the Senior Manager of Kids and Family Programming for the festival as well as year-round at TIFF by Lightbox. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the world premiere of The Elephant Queen, directed by Victoria Stone and Mark Deeble. Today's presentation is also in glorious Dolby Atmos sound, so I hope everyone enjoys that. To begin, we'd like to acknowledge that today's event is taking place on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit and the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community. As an extension of our TIFF Kids International Film Festival, we are pleased to present this family-friendly screening today. The TIFF Kids program is supported by the City of Toronto and the Ontario Arts Council. Just a reminder that this film is also eligible for the Girls People's Choice Award and the Girls People's Choice Documentary Award. We'd like to thank Endeavour Content and Mr. Smith Entertainment for providing us with the film today. When considering films for the festival, it's always a challenge for me because there are so many promising works that come through. So when I'm screening, there really has to be something to stand apart. And when I was done screening this film, all I could think was, this film has the biggest heart of any film that I've screened this year. The way the footage has been captured and the story that's told is truly short of remarkable. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome the filmmakers here today. Please welcome Mark and Victoria to the stage.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. For Mark and I and the Elephant Queen team, we feel so privileged to be here and excited to share the film with such an amazing audience. This for us is the culmination of 8 years. It was not 8 years, 8 years working every day on this film. And 4 years of that was spent in the field with a small dedicated team living alongside elephants in the wild. It feels very timely for two reasons. Firstly, the story is a story of female leadership, of family, of community, and of the circle of life. And secondly, because during the film, elephants went into crisis. If we don't do something about it, within our children or grandchildren's generation, there will be no elephants left on this planet in the wild. And we need elephants for the health of the planet. And also, quite simply, they are just like us. Now, I'm sure we all have heard lots of casting couch stories, and we have our own. It took us 2 years to find our star, and actually, we never really found her. She found us. She one day appeared at the back behind camp with her family and invited us to tell her story. She then went on to be the ultimate leading lady. And so I hope you enjoy the Elephant Queen, and as the words of today, share her story. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a reminder, following the screening, we will have a Q&A as well. So just save up all your questions and we will have the filmmakers back. For now, just sit back and enjoy the show. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to get started with one quick question. And then if you have questions,
Can we call up Lucinda and Etienne?
Of course, yes. By all means.
We'd like Lucinda and Etienne to join us.
Fantastic.
Lucinda joined us and brought her extraordinary producing talents to the film, and Etienne was our assistant director for 4 years in the field and is now running the outreach and education program in East Africa.
Wow. So maybe briefly you can sort of just tell us how you all got involved in the project and why this story? Why did you want to make this film?
Well, I think we'd spent probably the best part of 30 years in East Africa filming wildlife, and elephants had always been sort of tangential to our lives there. And it wasn't until, every now and again we'd see something and we'd think we'd clock it and we'd put it away. And then it really wasn't until, this dreadful drought, which started in 2009, that we became sort of involved with elephants. And then we saw what was happening to them and realized just how strong that family structure is and how there's so much to them we don't know. And that really was the impetus to make this film.
Same. Oh, yeah.
The same. I mean, I'm just drawn to elephants because they so reflect our behavior and our emotions, and it just is endlessly intriguing. I mean, it's the only animal in 30 years that I think we've got to the end of a film and thought, okay, I could go on.
Yeah.
Whereas other ones, you feel, when you finish, you're ready to
You've
move
told
on.
the story. Absolutely. Are there any hands in the audience? Oh, I see one right back there. Go for it. So the question was, what was the machinery that was used in the filming, and what was your diet while you were filming?
Well, I mean, the machinery is we shot on a red camera, and we had sort of specialized camera mounts on vehicles and planes, and we would go out every morning, try and find Athena in a herd, and then stay with them as long as we could. But sometimes we'd lose them, sometimes for months, sometimes for days, and they were a tough act to follow at times. But she was just such a charismatic elephant, and her story was amazing.
But so Mark did the cinematography for the film, and I don't think it's so much about actually what equipment he used, but the different angles and the different places we were able to put that equipment. And that's part of why it takes so long, because you first go into the wild, an elephant's going to let you nowhere near them. And it took several years. It took, as we said before, 2 years to find Athena, and then a good number of months until there's one particular day, which maybe you should describe, when you knew you'd been accepted.
Yes, I think the one when we finally won her trust was the elephants were feeding, and I was there in the camera car with the camera out the side, and I remember it well because Athena left her daughter Princess, and actively moved round the front of the car, so that essentially I was in a Land Rover, but between her and her calf, and I thought that she did that at that stage because we'd won her trust, and after that, then we had almost sort of unparalleled access to the family. She'd come right up to the car on occasions, but it was just that one episode that I think tipped everything in our favour and allowed us to get as close as we did.
Fantastic. And what was do you want to talk about your diet or sort of how you...
Oh, yeah, the diet.
Yeah.
The diet's really simple to describe. Beans and rice. Beans, rice, cabbage, onions, tomatoes. Beans, rice, cabbage, onion, tomatoes for 4 years.
I think we worked it out. We ate about 3 tons of beans in that time.
And we didn't have a fridge or anything, so there's no nice cold beer at the end of the day.
I see another hand right back there. You're wearing a sparkly shirt. Great question. Do you know what happened to Athena?
Oh, we don't know. We looked for her for probably a year,
Yeah, we
maybe
looked for
over a year. Every day, flying from the air, on the ground. We put out notices asking if people had seen her. The problem is, though, that if something happens to the matriarch, it breaks up the whole family. So we knew we had to just look for her, and we kept thinking we'd found her when we'd see others that might be. Sometimes you look from the air and you think, oh, that's her, and we just never found her. We still to this day haven't found her.
Wow, so many questions. Okay, let's go down here on the end.
I think it's essential. But the thing is that, as I'm sure you know, there are so many loopholes at the moment that allow antique ivory, allow fresh ivory, I should say, to be sold on through the antique market as antique ivory, and we've really got no way of properly monitoring how old that ivory is. I mean, I think the UK now has finally closed that market. But up until recently, it was any ivory pre-1947 could be sold, but any ivory after that couldn't. And it's like, well, how can you possibly monitor the trade? And if there are loopholes, people are going to use them to their own their own advantage. So, I think as far as I can speak for all of us, we have to close down any trade in ivory. It's what elephants need.
I think it also goes back to your first question of why did we make the film? We chose not to make an issue-driven film, and because there are some brilliant issue-driven films out there. But what we knew, if we spent long enough, that we could do, what we hoped, was to make the world fall in love with elephants. Because I think, to be honest, that the trade part of it will help. Everyone needs to work on that. But if we all love them, we're going to make decisions not to kill them.
I think succeeded in that and making everyone fall in love with elephants. So job well done. A hand up right here in the center. Go for it. I've been willing to ask this question for so long. How did you get under the mud and how did you get so close?
Let's start with the low and close. So because of the smaller characters in the film, we really wanted to tell it from toenail height, a lot of it. So one of the methods we did was to build a box, like an oven, a metal box, which was a bit about this high, that wide, and we buried it at water level, and it had like a letterbox slit for the camera. And then we put Mark in it for 12 hours a day, so literally from dark to dark, so that nothing would know he was in there. And it's a metal top, so we left him cooking every day. We put a few little blunt, upright bolts, because as you saw, elephants are very sensitive with their feet. We didn't want them to go and tread on the thing and then squash Mark, because it would not have held an elephant. But those bolts were enough. They never even tried them with their feet. They just did it. And anyway, so Mark spent, I'll let him, you better describe it, but he basically spent a month every day in this box. And it was only when we thought, okay, this is mentally affecting him, that we pulled him out. But Mark, tell him the story.
There was one time when and because it got so hot, in the middle of the day, and the roof became too hot to touch, and I used to take all my clothes off, and it was muddy and wet in the bottom. I used to sort of curl myself around the tripod, hoping that no elephants would come in the meantime. And there was one day when actually I fell asleep, and I woke myself, and I thought it was my snoring that had woken me up. And a big bull elephant had come down, and he'd inserted his trunk all the way through this sort of little opening, this letterbox opening, and it was there right by my face, and he was just breathing me in. And I wasn't quite sure what to do, but I'd seen there's an orphanage up in Nairobi, and I'd seen the keepers there communicate with the young elephants there by blowing down their trunks. And so I gently blew down this huge orifice which was staring me in the face, and it sort of uncurled itself, came back out through the thing. There was this enormous sort of shake of the elephant's head. The whole ground shook, and off he went. He thundered away. I mean, he must have known I was there.
Wow, that is unbelievable. We have time for one last question. We're going to go right down just in the front here. Yep, go for it. How is your research funded?
Okay. Well, we put a lot in, not of money, but of anything. We already had equipment, so we used that. And then we got investors who care deeply about elephants, but also who love our films, and they wanted to back this, and that's how we did. We also did it by everybody who came. It started really small. It started with me and Mark, and then Etienne joined us, and it was like a snowball. I think because of the whole ethos of it and what we were trying to do, people have just stuck to it as it's rolled along. And everybody is part of that team, and everybody's invested much more time than any sensible person might do. Okay, I think, well, there's two questions. I think that's a great question. But let's assume, first of all, not everybody can go and see elephants, because number one, there aren't enough left in the world, and number two, it's really expensive. So what we're doing, there are obviously many ways to do it. We're building a website through which you will be able to explore the whole elephant world, get involved, become part of things, find out where you can go to see them. And that will be developed. As far as where to go in the world, probably best ask the travel agent.
I would go to Tsavo, because the elephants we filmed, they are the last of the really big tuskers. Kenyan national parks operate on a shoestring, so every dollar you spend in the park goes to helping that park. And I think the one thing you should never do is, personally, this is something I would never do. I would never go and ride elephants. I think that whole industry across the world is just, it promotes the abuse of elephants. So whatever you do, don't ride them, just go and see them in their natural habitats and give your dollars to the people who are trying to actually preserve and protect both the elephants and their environment.
Fantastic. It was an absolute pleasure to present this film at the festival. I so loved it. I think everyone here can attest to that as well. I want to thank you so much for coming. Thank everyone for the film. Thank you. Don't forget to vote on your way out.